Modern technologies not only make our lives easier, but also allow us to look into such depths of existence that give us goosebumps. What we find there radically changes our understanding of familiar reality, and in particular about life after death. Watch this video to the end, and you will find out what amazing facts confirm the existence of the other world and how dead people try to contact the living. Since ancient times, people have believed that the dead often try to contact the living and convey important information to them, or at least to inform them that existence does not end after death. This is especially true for those who were deeply in love or eager to talk about how they died, for example, if they were killed or went missing. Materialists have always considered these to be idle inventions, and in the worst case, hallucinations. But everything changed in the spring of 1959, when this belief gained scientific confirmation. This happened randomly, but eventually forced many scientists to study this issue closely. The discoveries they made were so shocking that at first they were even afraid to make them public. Let's go back to 1959. Swedish artist Fredrik Jurgenson went out of town to record birdsong on a tape recorder. Everything was fine, but when he returned home and listened to the recording, he was amazed by what he heard. Among the sounds of nature, he clearly distinguished an agitated voice that said, "Fredrik, if you can hear me, be careful, you are being watched." The artist listened to the recordings several times, and at different speeds he heard this voice, which was clearly not from birds. He checked the soundness of the tape recorder, and it turned out to be in perfect order. Jurgenson soon realized that it was the voice of his dead mother. These messages from the other world turned his life upside down. He began regularly recording new messages on a tape recorder, receiving more and more messages from the dead, and in different languages, many of which he understood, since he was a polyglot. Jurgenson was fluent in Russian, Ukrainian, Estonian, and German. However, despite the evidence of the reports, he, being a materialist, initially tried to explain the phenomenon by saying that the recordings could be the result of interference from radio stations. However, soon all his assumptions were debunked, as he made recordings in places where there were no radio sources. He was finally convinced that modern technology is able to capture what is inaccessible to ordinary human perception, and that these messages really come from the other world, which was previously considered fiction. Thus, his discoveries have received scientific confirmation, and humanity has come closer to unraveling what death is and whether there is life after it. The messages from the other world that Jurgenson received were not very deep in content. They were brief, as if the voices coming from there were not allowed to reveal all the secrets. In addition, it probably took a lot of strength and energy to convey even short phrases to the dead. In 1964, Jurgenson published the book Voices of the Universe, in which he openly announced his discovery to the whole world. The book instantly became a bestseller and raised a wave of similar studies around the world. Konstantin Raudive, a Latvian writer, philosopher, and student of Carl Jung, became one of the brightest followers of the study of the mysteries of the afterlife. Although his first independent efforts were not successful, one day he managed to record the first message. The female voice on the tape said, "Go." Following Jurgenson's method, Raudive managed to record thousands of messages from the other world, and some souls called their names and reported that they were in another dimension. Many of them addressed him directly, uttering phrases that, on the one hand, made him afraid, and on the other, they realized that another reality really exists. He regularly received such messages. "You're dead and we're alive. You're listening to a lot of dead people. The dead are alive. Konstantin, there is no death here." The researcher also received a message from his deceased mother, who addressed him as she called him in childhood. This finally convinced him of the reality of what was happening, because only he and his mother knew this name. After a successful series of experiments, Raudive wrote the book Breakthrough, in which he described the phenomenon of voices from the afterlife. He published only a part of the received messages, 27,000 audio messages. Like Jurgenson's book, it caused a storm of discussion and prompted many scientists to study this topic. Of course, not all representatives of the scientific community believed in the authenticity of Raudive's notes. The recordings were subjected to a thorough analysis, and experts confirmed the presence of voices on the tape, but many believed that these messages could have been accidentally caught by radio waves. Shortly before his death, he repeated his experiments in the presence of other scientists. The experiment was conducted in a studio equipped with special equipment that excludes accidental or intentional ingress of electromagnetic waves. Recording on magnetic tape was performed using 3 devices, which were forbidden to be controlled by Raudive himself. During the 18 minutes of recording, nothing but silence was recorded, and everyone already thought that the experiment had failed, and Raudive himself was a charlatan. However, when the tape was listened to, dozens of messages from deceased people were found on it. It is difficult to put into words the excitement and fear that gripped all those present. After all, the dead spoke to them, that is, those in whose existence they refused to believe. Further analysis of the phenomenon of afterlife voices showed that messages are not recorded on tape when the equipment is working in an empty room without the presence of a person. For this reason, some scientists believe that the magnetic film captures not the voices of creatures from the other world, but the thoughts of those present. However, most likely, the answer is even simpler. A person performs the role of a kind of conductor of subtle energies, without which it is difficult to convey a message from that side of being. Scientists also found out that to record voices from the afterlife, it is better to use the reception frequency of 188,805 kHz, which is now called the Jurgenson frequency in honor of the researcher of this phenomenon. In his declining years, Friedrich Jurgenson did not stop his research activities in the field of studying the phenomenon of afterlife voices. He gave many public lectures around the world and predicted that humanity would soon be able to receive similar messages on television. His prophecy came true. As for Konstantin Raudive, after many personal experiments, he released another book on contacts with the other world entitled, Can We Survive Our Death? To this day, it is considered a classic work for those who are engaged in paranormal research. The facts and conclusions given in it say a lot about the true state of affairs regarding the phenomenon of death. In addition to books, Raudive left behind a large number of tape recordings and protocols. Some of them were sent to a special archive in England, and the other to a special memorial room where visitors can not only see but also listen to these recordings. What is imprinted on them leaves no one indifferent, because in these recordings there is an invisible breath of the afterlife, which gives even the most avid skeptics goosebumps. It is important to note that Raudive did not show his tribute of scientific interest in the topic of contact with deceased people for the sake of sensationalism or a senseless waste of time. His rational mind was always attuned only to facts. He believed that a person's personal qualities, character, and consciousness do not disappear after the death of the physical body, but pass into another plane of existence. The great inventor was so convinced of the reality of the existence of the afterlife that he actively worked on creating an electronic device that would allow him to communicate with the souls of the dead. Some researchers of his biography claim that he succeeded, and he really created a device resembling a dictaphone with which he could communicate with the dead. All these studies indicate that an extensive study of this topic does not make sense, and it should be given the closest attention. After all, this topic contains the key to the most important mystery of mankind, the question of what awaits us on the other side of life. Every year, more and more scientists are exploring the phenomenon of transmitting messages from the other world, opening the veil of the mystery of death. More and more people are joining these studies. Dear friends, thank you for watching my video to the end. If you liked it, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's very important. Thank you, and have a nice day.